taking out time and joining us. Before we start today's session, I would like to give you a little brief about our newly launched platform. So, in the last 2 years, after brainstorming with thousands of product managers, we have built the first ever lifelong learning platform. This is called True Merit. So, on this immersive platform, you
I
Uh,
don't think you're audible,
Piyush,
Piyush.
I guess
Piyush, you're
you're not
not
audible.
audible.
okay? I'll
It kind of comes and goes.
okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, this was entirely coherent. Go on.
Okay, okay. So should I start from the beginning?
I think so. I don't know if others are on the call and hearing him, but at least I could not make out.
Yeah, same
Okay,
here. I couldn't even hear you, Piyush.
okay. So I'll start from the beginning.
Uh, Piyush, again, the audio is not.
Okay. Let me try and switch. Uh, is this better?
Yeah, for now it's better. Go on. Give it a shot.
Okay. So it's a social learning platform. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a social learning platform which is case based. It has active feedback from mentors. It provides collaborative learning with peer community, and it has skill based progress tracking via True Skill Tech. So to top it up, we have weekly office hours, weekly masterclass with mentors like Pamit, and exclusive events scheduled for True Merit members. So we have just started to roll out and I am dropping link of the platform on our in the chat section. After this session, you can go and check this out. So without taking much of your time, Pamit, I would quickly like to welcome and thanks a lot for taking out time for session once again. As we all know, Pamit is working with MagicBricks right now. He has 15 plus years of experience in turning around markets and delivering sustainable growth for in user engagement, retention for marketplace products. So, Pamit, I would like to hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Piyush. We all say very embarrassing things on our LinkedIn profiles. We never realize they're going to be read out to a class full of people. I've definitely uh, taken the credit of turning around markets and delivering sustainable growth on LinkedIn for sure. I don't know if I've done it in real. Thanks for the introduction. I have a fairly distracting kind of a first slide, which I realize is I don't know if it's playing on your screen. Just a quick check on the tech here, which tends to disappoint at times. Maybe one of the participants can just confirm that both audio and video are fine, and then we can get started. I'll kind of lay out the script. Anyone here?
Yeah, yeah, it's going fine, Pamit. You can see the video, the click here and not click here thing.
All right, got it. So I can see Ankur Varma. I don't know if this is Ankur, the UX guy.
Yeah, yeah, the same person. Yeah,
Hi, how are you, dude? Good to see you.
yeah, 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 good. Yeah,
All right. So, Ankur, you would probably be one of the few persons in the product industry to appreciate this kind of a dilemma that all of us face when we're developing products, which is click here, no click here, and this kind of becomes a very interesting situation that we all face because we're as products get more and more mature, our priorities keep changing, and as our priorities change, the tendency, especially with Indian products, and perhaps also with a lot of the American products. In fact, I think the some of the products in the East have gone completely overboard with this, where it's if you look at some of the Japanese gaming products and all of that, it's like all full of clicks, but then that's also delivering success in that world. So I'm here as a student of this reality that we all face, and I thought it's a good chance that why not put my thoughts out there and put them up for debate more than this being a lecture. I would actually prefer if this is a session where we can actually debate this out a little, because these are questions that I don't think most product people have from in an academic framework been able to formulate and get their hands around. So let's try and get it. So the topic today is basically one of by definition I've tried to create a conflict in the topic. The conflict in the topic is that there are occasions, not all of them, but there are occasions where you will have user versus business, and at times you make those trade-offs in an Indian scenario as well as a global scenario. You have to at times make certain trade-offs, and there are conflicts not just in terms of user versus business. There are conflicts also at a more tactical level in terms of experience versus engagement. And those kinds of conflicts, I'm sure, as product people, most of you have faced. And uh, I'm kind of trying to create a framework around how to think through in those kind of slightly more ambiguous situations. No absolute truths here, no absolute correct answers here. So this kind of summarizes the scope of my discussion. A lot of the examples and a lot of my own individual experience and knowledge comes from the consumer tech sector. I'm not so much an enterprise guy, and my understanding of enterprise and business and B2B products is fairly limited. So a lot of what I say is subject to review from an enterprise perspective. In fact, people who are working in enterprise and B2B software should perhaps bring that up, and even feel free to correct me in terms of how it works in that scope. So I currently work at MagicBricks, like the introduction was made out. Let me start with my first slide. All right. Now, this is something that I'm putting up for debate again. All right. WhatsApp kind of released this feature, much to the joy of a lot of us impulsive people like me. I tend to send out messages and then realize, oh, maybe I should have formulated it better or rewritten it. And rather than doing an edit, they actually went full throttle and they did a delete. Now, one thing they did is, in terms of the way they executed their delete for everyone feature, or delete for all, or whatever the exact verbiage is, they decided to leave some footprints or tracking or whatever you want to call it on the interface. And to me, that's bad experience, because the sender is definitely put into a corner, because the people on the recipient side now know that he has said something, and that in itself now is a matter of discussion. So I'm coming from a school of thought that this is bad experience. Now, there's not necessarily an established fact, but it's a contemporary example. So I thought, why not start with some contemporary examples? Uh, 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 my sense is the reason, and I don't know if anyone from WhatsApp has actually joined or from Facebook, the group has joined. If so, feel free to speak up. But my sense is that this would have been probably done more from an engagement point of view, because these kinds of this kind of a handling on the UI tends to create reverse engagement. So the product manager seems to have thought that let me give the delete function, but let me keep the footprint so that we get reverse engagement, because curiosity will kill the cat, and the other side will either ask what happened, or at least be the other side will at least log in and have a look at what this footprint is, and who sent it, etc. So this to me is bad experience from a sender perspective, but from a business point of view, sometimes these kinds of calls are made. Of course, WhatsApp is now in news for a whole lot of other reasons. On O2, this is a British a telecom player. This is what they have done. Now, this is a very straightforward example, right? A lot of chatbots, as well as these conversational interfaces, UIs, they have they have this kind of very inviting kind of an interface on the homepage, and then when you're clicking it, they'll say we're busy right now, which is ridiculous. Again, an example of bad user experience. It's obviously a situation where someone has thought that no, we should engage, but in trying to get people to engage, you have not thought through of certain use cases. I've also put Netflix here. Again, this is a example I actually got off the web, where somebody had made a commentary about how Netflix is getting it wrong. Netflix is actually very acclaimed in a sense. And who am I to comment on their UX? They are pretty, I actually, overall, I'm a big fan of Netflix. However, I'm making the case that they're getting it wrong in one specific way, which is that every time you put Netflix on, there is this, they start to autoplay. And that is A, jarring to the eye, and B, very, at times very risky. You could be in a place where you don't want people to know that Netflix is on. You could be, for example, mischievously running it during your office hours at work from home, or you could even be at home, in a place where you don't want to disturb someone who could get up or wake up or whatever. So I'm making the case that this has been done to drive a particular metric here, and the metric being watch time. And whereas while you're trying to drive watch time and you're trying to get the user engaged with that particular piece of content, you have given away the experience part of it. So I've some bold claims I'm making. I'm sure this is all up for debate. These are not necessarily absolute truths, but uh, uh, the larger point I'm trying to illustrate in this conversation is that there is a certain amount of conflict that I'm sure that the product managers and the user experience guys would have had in trying to push this all out. All right. Now, one thing that I try and impress upon my product management team, whether it was at Shadi or even here at MagicBricks now, is that while everybody talks about or data, data is God and it's all about being data driven and all of that, all these little buzzwords, data can also be a little dangerous. In fact, you should be, I think someone very famously said this on Twitter or somewhere, that you should be data informed and not necessarily completely data led. And I kind of subscribe to that school of thought. Metrics are usually a vanity. In fact, my default is slightly on the other end of the spectrum. So I'm saying metrics are usually a vanity unless they demonstrate some effort or motivation behind intent. If it demonstrates something that the user has done out of will, intent, and the more the levels of intent that that particular metric demonstrates, the better the quality of the metric and the lesser the vanity within the metric. Now, I don't necessarily say these things in absolute terms, right? This is not a 1-0 kind of situation. For example, maybe there is one example where we can say it's an absolute truth, where if someone is paying your platform, right, in a B2C platform, like even Netflix, for example, number of subscribers, that's a truth metric, right? There's no question about the fact that you've done good enough a job on your product and your brand that people are actually going into their wallets, removing their credit card and making a payment. Now, that's a very strong level of motivation and effort demonstrated on the part of the user in order to change that number from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and onward. So your order metrics tend to be your very hard cast metrics. Of course, they're also very strongly coupled with being business metrics because the order then leads to revenue and so on and so forth. So the absolute truth metric that I kind of hold, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying that business is all there is to products. You also have to of course, have a user focus. But what I'm actually saying is that at the end of the day, when if you kind of arrange all your metrics in a spectrum of 0 to 1, which is the metric which tells you for absolute with a highest amount of certainty that you've managed to convince someone that your product is good, the metric with the highest amount of certainty, I would make the case that that is orders or membership plans sold or whatever you call it. Orders depends on the verbiage you use in your business. So this is an interesting line because I think for two reasons. One is that I've made it, so it doesn't come from any philosopher. It comes from a contemporary person working in the industry. But more importantly, it is a useful guidance to give to junior product staff. So for the senior guys here, I would recommend that you hold your team to that standard. One very simple example is if you're going to clickbait your way, like a lot of this is of course also established in popular discussions on the blog, in the blog world, where just creating clickbaits is the easiest way of getting your metrics to move. Clicks are usually a very weak kind of a metric, and I would put it right on the end of being a vanity metric rather than it being a sanity or a truth metric. But so try and stick to truth metrics which demonstrate effort. At Shadi, for example, one truth metric apart from orders and subscription plans that we used to sell, one truth metric that I used to be very convinced about was photos uploaded. Right, that demonstrates that someone's genuinely trying to put themselves out there. Shadi.com, of course, being a matrimonial platform. Similarly, for the ones who are not from India, Tinder being a loose or a bad comparison, but a dating platform where if you put up your picture, you're kind of really putting yourself out there. It's much more of a truth metric than a vanity metric. So the focus for product leaders as well as mid-level and junior product staff should always be to drive the real metrics. Don't get too carried away with the number of things Google Analytics shows you and all of these fancy business intelligence tools tend to create. Try and stick to a family of 4 or 5 or maybe 7 or 8 kind of metrics which kind of give you a sense of what your business is all about, and the family of metrics which are associated to that you should also look at but don't obsess over. All right. So now, in order for you to kind of arrive at what these metrics should be, I've kind of plagiarized from Amazon the concept of the flywheel. It's a very well established concept. No, I a very metric-led view of the world, even in product today, less in product, more in sales and marketing, but definitely even in product in many cases, is this funnel view of the world, right? Where it's a very linear kind of a hierarchical structure where, the highest, the IDA model in marketing, for example, is a very linear structure, doesn't look at business as a whole. Whereas what Amazon kind of pioneered, if I doesn't look like this is, yeah. So this is a very simple version of a flywheel. All right, this user-led view is now they're not necessarily going to apply in all cases. So I'll give you that. It's not like leads, prospects, and sales can be expressed in the form of a flywheel. But while leads, prospects, and sales at the end of the day, while they are a truth to a business, any marketplace business would typically look like a buyer-seller kind of a network. Now, this is a buyer-seller example. We can discuss other examples as we go along. But if you can kind of, especially with consumer internet products, if you can kind of visualize your business more as a cycle where one thing leads to another, creates network effects, and if you can develop metrics around that, those are very strong metrics to go after, because the concept of a flywheel or a network effect is that every incremental user adds value to at least half of the rest of the network, or in some cases, in the case of a one-sided marketplace, the entire network itself. Like Facebook is a one-sided marketplace where every new friend that you get adds to the entire network. Similarly, with the oldest network effect I would probably say is religion or something like money, where every new person joining the religion or every new person trading in that particular currency is adding value to the currency, because that currency now is of that much more value. It's kind of what's happening with the US dollar, or what happened with the US dollar in the mid 60s. So it's a framework that I'm kind of presenting and recommending for product people, especially and especially those product people who are working in the internet industry. Right, the buyer seller framework. Now, Amazon is of course the pioneer of this. Okay, so they've the way I've visualized it is that one leading to another, the other leading to the first, and therefore creating growth, and the growth actually culminating into business. Business is almost a side effect, and for product people, it's a nice way of thinking about how you're actually going to grow. Right, now, these are different types of network effects. This is more of a one-sided network effect on the left side, and a two-sided one. I gave you the example of Facebook being a category or a platform where one-sided network effects actually come into play. I gave you some old school examples of money, religion, telephony, telecom kind of businesses where even Yeah, I think to a great extent these are examples where every new person adding to the node is actually helping the entire network. On the two-sided side, buyers and sellers actually every time a seller gets added to the network, it's value addition for the buyers, not necessarily for the rest of the sellers. Except that one can also say that when a seller gets added to the network, if he leaves a review, then it's actually helping the rest of the sellers as well. So network effects. The metrics that are associated to these kinds of frameworks are very strong metrics, because those then actually reinforce a much more rather than saying strong metrics, those are strategic metrics, whereas the funnel metrics tend to be a lot more tactical. They tell you a very kind of a daily or a monthly view of things. So I recommend to product people to move to that. This of course is the famous it's kind of a picture of what Jeff Bezos drew back in the day. I think this is again a screen grab from the internet, where I'm told that he actually put it on a handkerchief and visualized this. So this is a slightly more complex version of what I was showing in a simple way. Buyers and sellers. What he's done is he's broken down value within the buyers, and so a buyer for a buyer, he's represented the buyers as traffic, and he said that because there's more traffic, and let's say we start from the bottom of this circle. So because there's more traffic, there's going to be more sellers, which is essentially what I was saying in my previous slide. And because there's more sellers, there'll be more choice, or selection is what Bezos has put it as. And because there'll be more choice, along with the fact that if we can get good pricing, there'll be a better customer experience. And with a better customer experience, basically he summed up customer experience in his case as the sum total of choice and price. So he said if you give them good choice and if you give them a good price, and this is not to be confused with user experience, especially for product folks who use this interchangeably. These are fairly different terms from an academic standpoint, also from an industry standpoint. So CX is actually more in terms of the value proposition that he's talking about here. So better customer experience because of choice and price will lead to more traffic. Makes sense completely to me. More traffic will again lead to more sellers. More sellers will again lead to more choice. And that the inner kind of wheel, or the inner pinion wheel of this, will therefore kind of self-drive. Now, the side effect of that he's created, if you look at what's coming out of the growth, which is that the center of the flywheel, he's saying because there's going to be more sellers, there's going to be lower cost structures. And that again makes sense, because if there's more traffic, which is exactly what's happening with Amazon today, and because if there's more sellers are going to now start competing. And once they start competing with each other, because obviously, when people are searching, they're looking for lower prices. They're also going to put lower cost structures. Their negotiations with the category partners also. So the margins can also be much better. So it's kind of a side effect in terms of the financial metrics now getting influenced because of the core product metrics. So the way I would think about this is almost like this, where the center of the wheel is product metrics, pure product metrics. If you can get these four things, so you probably have 400 product managers working on these four things. I'm just cooking that number up, but I'm saying you have a lot of people working on these four things, and then you have financial metrics then getting influenced because of that. That kind of summarizes your business model much better. In the case of a consumer product, it's a much better model to think about, and obviously something good to use as a reference. We kind of used it. This is then the original flywheel, which then they took to an absolutely next level, which I don't know how true or untrue it is. I think at least that's the way they've conceptualized it. Maybe it's still work in progress as far as Amazon is concerned, but they're now trying to get IoT into the so while there's this one network effect created on the business B2C side, there's one on the enterprise side that they're trying to create, where they're trying to get all the, they're trying to create the developer tools for IoT and third-party IoT devices. And of course, they're linking this with their own Amazon branded devices. So very interesting whether this actually plays out. But it's the thinking of it. What I really appreciate is the way it's been thought about, right? The quality of thinking here is really refined, because they're basically saying that we're going to now use our consumer network in order to be able to link. So through our consumer network, we're going to create consumer demand for our Amazon branded products. And along with those Amazon branded products, we're going to create developer tools for third-party devices. And therefore, we'll create a separate enterprise network effect, which, like I said, I don't know how true or untrue it is, but conceptually makes a lot of sense. Right. So this is our attempt, our humble attempt. So MagicBricks did something similar in terms of an exercise. Again, it's a marketplace internet consumer business. So we said, why don't we take a shot at it? And the reason I'm showing this is not to tell you that we've achieved any level of flywheel efficiency of the scale of Amazon, but more to demonstrate that this is something that you can do. Right? You can sit with your product heads, or if you are a product head yourself, you can probably sit with your CEO and try and figure out how to frame your internet business in this kind of a framework where one node is driving another. Now we in our case, we have sellers of property and buyers of property, or rent seekers of property, what do you want to call it, trying to meet. And we're trying to now create one happy network where for the sellers of property, what is important is that they get the buyers who they call leads to their business. But in order for them to get those leads, they have to make good quality listings on their platform, create a selection and choice on our platform. And once they create a selection and choice on MagicBricks' platform, that will lead to better search, discovery, customer experience, buyer traffic onwards. So I don't want to waste too much time there because it's not necessarily something all of you would be interested in. But it's a demonstration of this being a useful idea. All right, then you put metrics around all of this. Now, I started with metrics versus experience because that's a very flat and unidimensional view of our everyday reality, right? At the end of the day, that's all. That's a lot of what we're doing. Of course, there's a whole tech infrastructure backing it, but at the user level, we are basically trying to influence these two things. But the business architecture that supports it, if it is thought through at this level, and if the metrics can be associated to nodes in a network, so you're essentially creating metrics at every node, and then you're saying to your product manager or your senior product or your associate product manager, saying that go after this metric, because if you can get me this volumes, I know I'll be able to create a barrier to entry for my competitor. That's also partly why I believe that internet businesses tend to become, hegemonic. They tend to become large. They tend to be one or two large monopoly kind of setups in most categories, and because they tend to create these network efficiencies. So what I demonstrated so far, I thought was useful for, or should be useful to conceptualize the entire setup, right? This is more of a toolkit for strategic product thinking, less of a tactical view of the world. I fully appreciate that sometimes you're doing things because you're trying to, you're trying to influence a particular metric in a particular way for a particular market, because that's what drives the market. So I'm not making that case. But if we now try and look at the consumer psychology part of these metrics, that's what this book that kind of has influenced me a lot. I'm sure many of you would have read it. If you've not, this basically is the sum and substance of it: consumer hooks, right? The fact that you want people to get hooked onto your platform, at least till the time that it is relevant to their life. Now, this applies less and less for businesses which are life stage businesses, and more for businesses which are lifestyle businesses. Shopping is a kind of a lifestyle business. You can shop today, you can shop a week later, you can shop again maybe a month later, and you tend to keep shopping and buying stuff. That's the way you live your life. That's a lifestyle business. A life stage business like shadi.com or magicbricks.com has to create hooks very smartly within the life stage of the consumer, so you don't get forever, because shadi.com is not going to be relevant after you're married. Similarly, MagicBricks is not going to be relevant after you've already purchased a flat. In many cases now, increasingly, for both Shadi and MagicBricks, there is a second attempt at it. But they tend to be a lot fewer instances of you buying these things or buying a subscription pack on Shadi. So That's why consumer hooks becomes an important kind of a framework as far as metrics are concerned. And this is the hook canvas. Again, Neerayal, the person behind it, behind creating this thesis, is very useful if you can create, uh, uh, a framework which again has a loop between you and the consumer. Now, there is a very interesting Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, which actually creates a moral case against this. Which I'm kind of descoping that from a conversation today, because that's not, that can be argued in many ways. I did like that documentary because it did make a very good case of the problems that we face. A lot of people like me, for example, I do necessarily have to check my phone every once, uh, maybe once an hour at least, because I do tend to get FOMO. Now, that particular feeling that even Social Dilemma talks about, or even you would be experiencing, of having to check your phone, that's the trigger that of the highest order, right? So that's the trigger that even Neerayal talks about. He talks about an internal trigger. All right. Now, if you can create an internal trigger, now Google has done that, right? Google is, the moment you have a question, it's an internal trigger. You go to Google. Pretty much, Gen Z and millennials and almost everyone now is using the phone as an extension of their brains. Pretty much, living their life like a cyborg. You can't lie, for example, anymore. It's very difficult to lie, because the moment you do, you'll get checked out on Google. So these are all internal triggers. The moment you think of a question, you go to Google. The moment you feel hungry, you go to Swiggy, for example. Swiggy is an Indian product. Uh, I think there are similar ones, Just Eat and all, in the US and America. The moment you feel, for example, bored or depressed, unfortunately, you go to Facebook. The moment you feel the need to check out pictures, you go to Instagram. These internal triggers are triggers that develop over time and hard to create. But in the absence of an internal trigger, thankfully for humbler products, Neerayal has also spoken of external triggers, right? He says that, for example, a very simple alert on the phone, a notification, is a trigger. That's kind of what WhatsApp relied on for a long time, right? They kept reinforcing by, pushing it as a notification on the tray on the top of the phone, and you would go and check it. So, and now, of course, WhatsApp itself has become an internal trigger. So you kind of evolve from being a trigger that is internal, from a trigger that is external to becoming intrinsic inside the human psychology. And that's the start of the hook, right? Then that trigger should culminate into a simple action or a behavior, typically a click. The simpler the action, the more likely for that trigger to result in a reward, which is your number 3 item, right? The reward on the click typically is something very small, which is small, but there is some gratification, there is some element of you being left to want more, which is a brilliant way of putting it, right? You give a little and you keep a little. So that reward balance is something that a lot of product managers get wrong, actually, where they tend to give everything out there, and they're unable to create an investment part of it. So you want to invest after that. Now Facebook has done that, right? So after the reward, they put you into the investment cycle, which is that they try and make sure that you kind of interact with the platform. For them, putting up a picture used to be one form of such bit of work or investment that they used to do. Investment is basically nothing but a work, not a financial investment, but a little bit of effort. So while action is bare minimum effort, investment is actual effort. So effort of putting up your picture on Facebook or on Instagram is an investment that you make, because you're putting part of your life there. You're wanting some kind of a reverse engagement from your friends who will say, wow, your picture's looking good, etc. And this then increases the likelihood of the trigger, because once you put the picture up, or once you've put a message out on WhatsApp, or once you've on the enterprise side, if you're using Google Hangout, if you put a message to your boss saying that I'm you know unable to solve this particular problem, or whatever it is, it's an investment you've made with the hope of some kind of a reward. But for that then first moves into a trigger cycle. So that cycle is very, very clearly a cycle that you can get sucked into. Neerayal has actually, to his credit, written another book, which is on the which makes the other side of the argument in terms of how to get how to stay indistracted. I think it's called Indistractable or something. I haven't read it, but I'm sure that will be also a good read. I am in no way sponsored by Nirial, but I thought these are good concepts for you guys to uh, kind of think about and ponder about. So this is it. This is my presentation for the day. This last example is something that I've covered. Um, Product management to me is a very careful balance of art and science. I think a lot of product people, and in my experience, a lot of product people in India tend to be more leaning on the science side of product management. And unfortunately, even in the science side of product management, it's the data science part of product management, which to me is actually the most easy part of product management, because getting data to answer your questions and creating a analysis is it's a very straightforward activity. I consider it something that you should be good at, but it is not necessarily what will move the needle if you're an entrepreneur or if you're trying to set up a larger business. So guys, if you have a bunch of questions, I'd be happy to take them. I've covered a whole host of things. Some of them are very controversial. I'm hoping I've stoked some kind of a debate here. And if so, then shoot the questions. Let's engage.
Samit, this is Gautam.
Gautam, yes. Hi.
Yeah, I recently joined a product company. Actually, it's a B2B product. So I was just thinking, were there any businesses, any B2B business, any B2B software product has made use of this hoop canvas and got succeeded in their journey?
You've got me on the back foot on B2B. What B2B tends to do is it uses a slightly different mode of operation, which is creating embedded technologies, which is that because you've done because you're using this particular enterprise software, uh, there is a certain compatibility advantage with another software, and therefore there is a network effect between this and that, and therefore you tend to kind of create the entire tech stack using that same organization's products and services. But definitely off the shelf, off the top of my head, I'm a consumer product guy. I don't have an answer, but if anyone here in the audience does know of B2B products that can create network effects, that would be great. This is more of a consumer product framework, though, Gautam, to be very candid with you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
One sec, I think I've accidentally paused my video.
I have something to say here.
Yes.
In regards to your second slide, which talks about the WhatsApp delete and WhatsApp feature, what they have implemented, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So what I feel that all these WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, all three of them has a different what you call the functionality, where WhatsApp has delete option, where it leaves the footprint. When comes to Instagram, it says unsent, and the receiver will not be knowing that okay, the sender has sent any message. And again, at the same time, for the Facebook, right, Facebook has delete message, but only for certain period of time. So what I feel that is, even though all three products are from the same organization, they have a different metrics. I would like to understand, is there any kind of idea behind that, or is there kind of strategy behind to keep all these things in different products, or it's just a kind of a user in what you call the idea to have a feature on platform?
Okay, got your question. So you're saying that considering there are all from the same company, how come there is a different treatment, and are there strategies involved behind it? I will give you see, the answers to these questions are usually answers that the founders of those companies would know better, but I will give you my point of view. Most likely no. Most likely organizations are not functioning in a way, unless it's a it tends to be very obvious if there is a sync between one product in that company and the other product. These are products which have their own set of product management teams with their own agenda, with their own focus. Within an organization itself, you'll find within categories there are product managers who do very, very different things. So my answer is most likely it's not something that just because it's from the same company, they've done it in a way to manipulate or something. It's not likely the case. Ankur, you have a question. You raised your hand.
Thank you, Pamit.
Yeah. Hi, Pamit. Actually, you were talking about network effect in B2B, and I have experienced it in AdTech that I was working for. And in AdTech, I believe that there is, if you can call it a network effect, because advertisers are looking for platforms to advertise on, and the app developers and are kind of looking for monetization. So this kind of triggers a network effect that if you have more advertisers, you'll get more people on the platform to kind of develop apps for you. And if you have more developers, more advertisers will come in. So I don't know if it's the right example, but I think
It's a fantastic example. I completely agree, Ankur. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and following up on that, I have a question actually. So I wanted to know that, see, where you talked about clickbait, right? And in the whole ad tech platform, that clickbait matrix kind of converts into revenue matrix. So I want to know your opinion about that. That do you think it's not a vital metric to follow, or
See the click-through number, that CTR number. It's not like it's not vital. It is a number that is part of the funnel, so you'll definitely look at it. But in fact, AdTech is a very good example of an industry which has kind of focused too much on it. Look around. What are the successful AdTech businesses? Very, very few. Increasingly, marketers are moving towards search. In fact, in terms of ad spends, ad tech network affiliate businesses are struggling because they have for whatever reason they when they kind of started off, they focus so much on getting people to just click and to create some kind of traffic which they monetized at a very tactical level. Eventually people realized this is just click traffic, and the quality of the traffic is actually what counts. And then they started creating counter metrics for it, which is the quality should be good, it should culminate into a lead, there should be a phone number dropped on the landing page. So the click metric, I wouldn't completely rule it out though. The quality, it is if there are ways of achieving a good click, right? If you're being very candid about what you're trying to sell on that ad banner, and if you're if it isn't, for example, if it isn't a sleazy picture of a girl there and you're trying to sell home loans, it makes no sense, right? But if you're doing it in a way where you're genuinely trying to get people who are looking for a home loan to actually click on the banner, you are more likely to have success. So my answer is therefore an answer which I think the ad tech guys here will not like, which is that they've probably not focused on creating value for the businesses that are paying them. Very few of them actually ended up doing a very fantastical job, because those kinds of volumes they've not been able to create. Okay, I have a hand raised. I've definitely stoked up debate. Prateek, is it you? You can go on if you're raising.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to add one point related to that clickbait thing. That in the ad tech industry, we do follow the clicks, and but the real metric is the conversion which we receive.
Correct.
So even if you do the clickbait, the last metric which will be the beneficial one for the company would be the conversion which we receive from the clicks. So even though there will be two cases that I will be receiving like more clicks on one campaign and lesser clicks on second campaign, but the conversion is higher on the second one because the clicks were real as compared to the clickbait one. So that's the thing.
Absolutely, exactly my point, right? The click itself, if you're just going to do it through a baity way, then you're going to get bad clicks, and that will not culminate into leads. So completely agree with you. I can see Vikram Vora here. He's pretty much an ad tech guru. Vikram, feel free to disagree on this one. I'm making a case which is a little tongue in cheek.
On ad I use it. Will be no. In fact, I would say that yes, sir. I would say that like it's extremely valid. And then everyone is just focused on meeting the short term. Everyone is just focused on meeting the short term objectives. And then as a compromising on the long term convertibility. No. So, but besides, so typically beyond click, what after the click? How many
Correct.
clicks are converting into leads? How many leads are converting into sales? What is the engagement when? What is the engagement of the users, or what is the engagement of each click? Post the user being in the system. All that also has to be looked into. So at least by the ad tech platform.
Absolutely with you. I mean, it's coming from Vikram, I can say with a certain amount of confidence then that I think there is a realization also in the ad tech industry, Vikram, if I'm not too wrong. You being one of the slightly senior guys in the industry, I would assume that, there is some effort you guys are making in terms of trying to figure solutions that are less clickbaity now.
Yes. So then, yeah, but however, like depends on the advertisers, because most of the advertisers, they're so, that most of the advertisers are myopic, and then as such, very few advertisers actually believe in digital branding.
Yeah.
Just basically just letting the users experience the product, and then basically so then allow the network effect. All are just focused on specific action. And then kind of, of course, so now, and so then as digital advertising is also evolved, wherein you can drive specific audiences as per your products, but however, there are issues of trust and transparency, with, as well as most ad tech platforms, as such, so then as such, wherein an advertiser doesn't know that in case he's spending $100, exactly how much is getting spent, because of the platform charges and all the intermediaries and all that. So that is where is the problem area. Huh?
Got it. I think advertisers are also myopic because what seems to be happening on the advertiser side of it is that again they've got very metric oriented. This is actually quite a network effect in itself, right? Basically, advertiser is a marketing manager, yeah, and he basically
Absolutely.
has a KRA. He has a KRA to
Yeah.
drive certain amount of traffic. Now that's not been thought through by the department head. So he's been told
Yeah.
what to get me traffic. He's trying to drive traffic to clickbait, and the ad tech industry is kind of reinforcing that. So it's actually both stakeholders getting it wrong. But I'm increasingly seeing people move away from it. I think Google has kind of dominated the lead industry so much that you have to now kind of move away.
True. And yeah, that's it. No. I just hope I could, I just hope I could explain to everyone and I was pretty clear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
All right. Yeah.
Kevin, you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Panik.
Thanks, Vikram. Nice to see you here. Kevin, you are asking.
Hi, Pamit. Nice to see you. And good to hear from you. Some really insightful thoughts on the network effect and hook. And I think when we're talking about some people may disagree with the hooks, and I was trying to sort of connect it, and I generally like to use this framework and sort of maybe I can share it for even the benefit of the others here. That I sort of use a funnel, and I think it's very, very commonly used, the AIDA funnel, right? AIDA.
Yeah.
And I sort of built on that and made it the AIDA OER funnel. Okay. And what it stands for is attention, interest, desire, action, onboarding, engagement, and retention.
Yeah.
And what I have done in the past is use the hooks framework within each of this segment of the funnel. And when you were talking about the metrics, how sort of people need to focus in product managers as they move forward, need to focus on the larger objective of the company strategy or vision. And I think if you start putting your metrics in each of this part of the funnel, of the AIDA OER funnel, by the time you reach the end, you would be moving one of those key metrics, the primary metric of the business. And I just wanted your thoughts on it, and probably I thought if it's a good way approach, maybe the viewers here could benefit.
It sounds very fantastic. So you're saying you're basically, correct me if I'm getting this right. What you're saying is that you not only use the consumer hook kind of framework, which is basically to drive people to develop a habit, right? Yeah. So basically, the hook framework, if I were to put it in very simple words, English, it's a habit framework. It's about how to develop your product as a habit in the life of consumer, right? So you're saying you make habits out of every node in your network.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it makes a lot of sense
Each
actually.
part of the journey of your network. Yeah. So when you're onboarding, you still create a hook. And the idea is that the moment you go into that investment part, you are thrown back from the hook into the next phase of the funnel. And that sort of ensures that you're moving through the end. You're not having the churn at any given point within the funnel. You're taking them as much as possible, pushing them towards the end of the funnel.
Got it. And where does IDA fit into this though? Yeah, that's the only piece I didn't follow.
IDA is still the part of user journey. I mean, without grabbing an attention, you don't. I mean, we're talking about ad tech. Without that, probably the ad, the key phrases or the combination of dynamic phrases that comes up, I would not have attention. And only when I read the content and it makes sense to me, it's my interest, and then I click on it and I go and see a landing page where my desire comes on, and then I click the sign up button, and that's my action. Maybe sign up or download app or something like that. That's my action. And then I go to onboard, which is my sign up itself. And then I'm actually taking a service that the product is offering, and that's my engagement. And retention is the ongoing part at the end. Retention and referral. You can put both.
Retention tends to be where the network, the larger business network effect kind of.
The larger that moves into network effect. I mean, if you don't take your user to that retention, you're not really doing anything with engagement as such to drive network defenses.
See, the challenge, I'll tell you, will always be when you're talking about hooks now. The challenge is the trigger part, right? At Shadi, and I won't talk about my current company because I'd like to keep that out of scope from the discussion today. But at Shadi, one of the challenges I used to face was every time a person watches, like I used to tell my product team there that every time a person watches a film, they should log on to Shadi because the film tends to be a romance film. And anything in the air about romance, obviously it's not something that we managed to achieve to the scale that we would have wanted. But how do you create an internal trigger is tough. It's probably it is not something that is agnostic to category. So it completely depends on category. Like there's no way I can create a trigger for something like maybe a home loan. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Amar, you're here. Anything you can think of?
I have something that I use for trigger creation. I use, and I don't remember the name of this professor. He was from Wharton, and he referred a book which was very, very old, probably written in the 70s.
Right.
And to develop trigger, he used something called an OSR framework. And what it meant was the trigger it should have a very clear defined objective. And the S is for scaffolding. That is, you should be, you should feel the need that this is going to take you forward. It's not like you click and you're done. It's a, a 504 or 505 or whatever. You are moving forward. So there is a clear focus that it's going to move you forward into a desired path. And that's what scaffolding means. And when you actually go forward, it should not be a bully that you clicked a button and then nothing really happened, or you were like, oh, okay, fine, close this window and go to the next. So the R is reinforcement, right? So what they thought of moving forward to, and I think it's just going into a lot of frameworks, but then it did make a lot of sense that if we think from that angle, maybe the trigger becomes easier because you have looked at taking them through the journey and reinforcing what they're going to go into your product for.
Got it.
But it's not easy. Easier said than done. Right?
All right, we got one more question from Shashwat. I'm really enjoying the conversation here, guys. Let's.
Thanks.
Hey guys, Shashwat here. So my simple question is like, what is a better metrics to focus at? Is it customer retention or is it customer activity? So for example, like I do have Facebook on my phone, but I don't use it much. But like if you talk about Instagram, I do use it like very regularly.
Good question. I think one kind of should be driving the other if you look at it. But see, retention is a metric that I think at the end of the day, the objective of retention is customer lifetime value, right? So retention is kind of surrogate to that, right? So if you're holding people into the network or into your product, you are creating more and more customer lifetime value. as opposed to which was the other metric you spoke of? Activation, engagement.
Customer engagement, yeah, activity, customer activity.
Yeah, and I mean, I would make the case that the two are very, very strongly correlated. In fact, there is a certain degree of causality in it. Now, this is again something where data science can probably help us better try and figure out the extent of correlation and the extent of causality. These are two fairly different things, but data scientists increasingly are figuring out ways to identify how causality comes into play. So, for example, if you're logging in every day, right, you are likely to stay retained on that platform for a much longer time. But the problem is that if you're logging in every day, you are kind of by definition, you're not, there is no, it's not necessarily causality. There is a degree of correlation to the fact that you found this product good. So you are anyways going to be retained. And one manifestation of that retention is you logging in every day. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say here? I don't know if I've articulated it right.
I got your point, but then like, see, my point here being, it's okay that I've retained the customer. Like me, I do have an account on Facebook and I'm not deactivating it, but in a similar fashion, I'm not even using it. So like, there's a percentage of users on Facebook right now that they're not actually using Facebook. It's just an app that is there in their phones in some corner. But then when I talk about, let's say, Snapchat or Instagram with the millennials in the picture, they are actively using it, like vibrantly using it in particular fashions in different ways with reels and everything into the picture.
Right.
So that is more of my point here. Like, how do we make sure that this engagement keeps on going over there?
Good question. I think, see, there are other aspects to when you're making those specific examples. There are other aspects to why Facebook is kind of dying out with the millennials and all of that. And there's a lot written about it, but from what I read, it seems to be that it's become the network of families, and you tend to keep bumping into your aunties and your uncles over there,
Correct, yeah.
and moving away. So there's a negative network effect. You're actually trying to avoid that network almost entirely, and therefore you're not logging in. And the same value proposition you can get in Instagram much more easily. What seems to have happened is the undesirables have driven out the desirables. That's one way of thinking about it. So that in that specific example, but to me, I will have to bring you back to the same point. There is a certain degree of causality and a certain degree of correlation between people who keep logging in and people who stay retained over a longer period of time. And depending on the specific category, that kind of varies. But you will have to get the person to log in frequently in order for you to be having a chance to be able to retain him on the long term.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think time is up, 10 o'clock. For all of you who have been here on a Friday night, spent time with a fat product guy like me, thanks for your time. I'm sure there's need for romance in your life, so please go back to it. But thanks. I think I enjoyed this chat. There was a lot of fantastic points that I at least took away from the audience. I'll hand it over back to the team here for them to take charge. Piyush, would you like to sum it up?
Thanks a lot of it.
Piyush, we can't hear you, buddy.
What's the issue? Is it audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying the session was really insightful. Thanks a lot for taking our time and conducting this session. So guys, recording of this session will be published on our YouTube channel. I'll share it with all of you through our weekly newsletter. If you have missed something, you can check it out over there. And we have a lot more upcoming sessions lined up. So you can go and check out our website. In the event section, we keep on updating our upcoming events. So from there, you can stay updated. That's all
right.
from me. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for the time.